morning. So today we are here for TiE Kerala's Coffee Pay Charcha session by Mr. Aju Jacob of Synthite Industries. And a warm welcome to everyone for this event. And for taking up the further proceedings, I will request our President Jacob Joy, to anchor, moderate the session.
Very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for coming in. I'm not going to take any time out of what Aju probably has to say, except thank you all for being here and make his seat as uncomfortable as possible. Ask him the tough questions. I've told him that he will get the tough questions. And spare me, but with that, I think we can start. So, I think most of you here know Aju. So Aju, thanks for coming in. And I'll just give a brief introduction about Aju. So all of you know he's the MD of Synthite. He's finished his engineering, chemical engineering, and done his MBA, PGP Max from ISB. He's on the board of several companies, which includes Synthite. And also, outside of his business, he is, for example, he was the CII Kerala president last year. He is the treasurer of the MOSC Medical Mission Hospital. He heads the management of the St. Peter's School, amongst many other things that he does. And he still finds time to look like this. So probably we have a lot to learn from him. So Aju, thank you so much for being here. And as I told you, we keep this conversation a chat between friends. But I think a lot of them here would like to know your story, right? So let's keep it like a story. And if you could just enlighten us into your growing years, right? The years before Synthite and something which I'm sure there are a lot of anecdotes you have to tell us.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, TiE, for giving me this opportunity to be with you all, sharing my story. It's always good to learn from experience. Probably I'll be able to share something that's valuable for some of you. Well, I did my schooling in Kerala, then my pre-degree was in Trivandrum. That's the first time I was out of Cochin, actually. I did my first 11th and 12th the pre-degree in Trivandrum, which was a great experience because away from home, being in a hostel, having to take the public transport and going to college. So there was a lot of learning there. And I still remember, the pocket money that Dad used to give. It was 100 rupees those days for a month, and how you managed with that. So he made us learn how to manage money. It was not. So he made sure that he paid for the college fees as well as the monthly bus tickets, but rest everything was meant to be managed in 100 rupees. So that was a great learning how to manage money. And school, I was an average student, but since my dad was very particular that I should do chemical engineering, I had to really put heart and soul during those 2 years to get into engineering. Unfortunately, Kerala then only had the Trishur Engineering College which was offering chemical engineering. It was very particular. Those days you would insist on children to study what the parents wanted to know. Probably not these days, but so I could not get into the Trishur Engineering College by a few marks. So then eventually I had to go to Bangalore. I was reluctant to go to Bangalore at that time, but eventually landed up in Bangalore with MS Ramaya, where again it was great learning, going outside the state, staying with students which were from different parts of the country, and so it was very, very good. So I learned the language. I was able to learn speaking Hindi because we had 6 of us staying together in an apartment. So that again was a learning in terms of managing, not only learning chemical engineering, but also coexisting with students and having a teamwork. How we are 6 of us. In fact, all the 6 of us stayed all the 4 years together, which meant that we had some synergy, some coordination that also helped. We still remain good friends. So these were my basic years, and post my engineering, again, my dad was very clear that I should be coming back, but Synthite at that stage was a relatively small business with my dad, 2 of his nephews in the business. My brother was already there. to my brothers-in-law also there. So I thought it was too much and I wanted to do something on my own. I was trying to pursue something in Bangalore. Fortunately, I was telling Jacob yesterday, I think that's the best piece of advice I ever got, because a friend of mine was senior to me a couple of years. I was a builder. So he asked me why I'm hanging around, because I think about a year ago he had come to Cochin with me and he had seen Synthite, even though it's a small organization at that time. He said, you have a fabulous opportunity to develop that. Your dad has built a business and you've learned chemical engineering. Why are you wasting time trying to build a new business in Bangalore? And he insisted that I go back. So I still feel what Shankar told me then was the best advice I ever got. So that brought me back to Cochin. And I started with my dad in the year of 1987. I was 22. So that is my initial years, yes. So there's a lot of learning in these processes that happen. And one example also, like I was again sharing with Jacob yesterday, I think when it was the second year of college, my dad gave me ₹1 lakh at that time. It was a lot of money then. I wasn't very sure why he did it. I didn't ask, he said, he had plans of buying an apartment, but then that was, it was pretty cheap those days to buy an apartment there. But he didn't tell me anything specific. So what I did was, I loaned that money to a guy who was running a supermarket. And I used to get the interest, and that was enough for me to keep me going every month. So, but what happened, the sad story was at the end of 4 years, I lived all my 4 years with the money interest that I was getting, but finally that business went bankrupt and I lost that 1 lakh, but then at least I was able to, again, I never had to ask dad for money, and I also learned doing a business. Of course, it was lending, which I didn't continue, but at least something that, again, related to business, I was helping that guy also with some business discussion. So I learned some things, other than chemical engineering, also being there and managing that money and working with the supermarket guy. So these were small learnings that I got through my early learnings in life.
So, see, I think what comes out with this is that your father was actually giving you snippets of knowledge here and there and trying to test you. So what would your learnings from your father be? I know Charcha personally, I've learned a lot from him. So what were your learnings from him before you entered the business, and how was it different after you entered the business?
No, what I realized is once he felt confident about something, he let it for you to manage. Even in earlier days, like I don't think even during my engineering, never has he checked what marks I was scoring or never asked how well I was doing in my studies, because he had a certain amount of confidence about what I would do. So for that reason, I had I could do what I wanted in that respect, and he didn't manage me so much. And the same was the case earlier on in Synthite. The first 2 years, I don't think I used to even come to Cochin. I used to be always in the factory. I came from a process background. I was based in the factory, working with the production team. It was also a time when a lot of things could be changed, because it was very early stages. The factory was built in 73, 74. A lot of things could be improved. And I saw the opportunity. We had a couple of other chemical engineers. So I was able to put a lot of effort alongside. And when my dad saw that happen, it gave me a lot of freedom to be. In fact, it was great to work along with him. And one other aspect where he really supported, where I feel that was another big a personal milestone for me in terms of taking risk. Or today, the risk appetite that I have is in 1992 we had a huge interest for a particular product, and we didn't have enough manufacturing capability at that time. So we identified a facility in Calicut, which we thought we will be able to take over and run it. We ran that facility as a job worker for about 6-7 months. And since it was a business that was already in bad shape, the owners wanted to sell it. So we decided to buy, but maybe we didn't pay enough attention or enough due diligence in terms of the overall infrastructure, and there were some major flaws which we overlooked at that time. So soon after we bought the facility in 1992, it was with the bank, so we had bought from the bank. And we started to manufacture some of our products there, and we had huge quality issues because of the construct itself. There were certain aspects of the extractors in the facility that was not up to the food standards. which we realized later. And I was in dire straits, having invested in money. Personally speaking, first initial initiative that I was taking personally to get Synthite further on. Then, I was trying to fix it. We were trying to look at some quick fix and see whether we can, give it a stainless steel lining or something. And somehow make the factory food grade. Unfortunately, none of that worked. And my dad never scolded. He didn't blame that it was because of you that it happened. He never put a blame on me. Instead, he said, "You made a mistake. You should correct it," and take an effort to correct it. And we had to strip out the entire facility, put something new. But that was a great break for me. In fact, if he had put me down at that time, or all the blame was on me for such a mistake, I would probably never had an appetite to take risk in the future. But that support was really very good. I remember, and I think I've said this in many other forums, he mentioned, so sometimes you cut it off. You have to make sure that you made a mistake, cut it off and start new. So that's the advice he gave me, and he supported me in that. So today, if you ask me, a lot of the things that I do, I've become an eternal optimist after that. The amount of risk that I take in new initiatives, but of course, one or two would fail in the 10 things that we do new. But the risk appetite actually got instilled, I would say, because of that first confidence that my dad showed in me.
50 years ago, what he did was something which was very high risk. It was not, someone wouldn't start an industry in Kerala. And it's been 50 years since Synthite, more than 52 years now, since Synthite was started. And probably this is the right time to just see the video, your legacy video, and just for those of you who don't know Synthite, just to understand what the organization is, so that the rest of the Q&A would probably help you get more insights.
The progressive 70s were on the pivot of change. Despite turmoil and conflict all over the globe, an inspirational story was unfolding in Kerala, the center of the ancient spice trade. A young entrepreneur, C.V. Jacob, was excited after returning from Japan, where he had learned about the extraction of spices to produce oleoresins. C.V. Jacob was very familiar with spices and worked tirelessly to manufacture and export oleoresins. His fledgling enterprise called Synthite pioneered not just a company but an entire industry that helped revolutionize food processing as we know it today. The 1980s saw major economic upheaval that created tremendous opportunities for the developing world. India, however, was in the midst of socio-economic turmoil brought on by her huge population and controlled economy. C.V. Jacob built Synthite, in his own image, a company that was agile and venturesome. When an opportunity to explore fresh jasmine flower extracts presented itself, Synthite built a fully functional factory in just 90 days. Marigold flowers presented another business opportunity that Synthite was quick to capture. Synthite was soon recognized with accolades from the Indian government for contributing valuable foreign exchange to an awakening economy. By the 1990s, a new world order was emerging as India was economically unshackled, and soon enough, one of the largest consumer markets was becoming more accessible to the world. Powered by a relentless urge to innovate and develop scalable systems and processes, Synthite became the first Indian agri-business to receive the ISO quality certification. R&D was established as a cornerstone of the company's evolution with an advanced technology center. Synthite pioneered the production of paprika oleoresin from the Indian bed ghee chili and scaled its curcumin production to unprecedented levels, thus emerging as the largest producer of spice oleoresin on the planet. economic reforms propelled India into a dominant economic force, lifting millions of people out of poverty. The appetite of this new Indian middle class was satiated by world-class products from Simega, a Synthite-led joint venture that reflected the ambitions of the Synthite group. The internet era enabled Synthite to develop a reputation as a trusted partner and collaborator who could help solve complex challenges. One such mandate resulted in Synthite pioneering the use of supercritical fluid extraction technology to develop solvent-free extracts, thus creating one of the largest supercritical facilities on the planet. Global supply chains were frequently tested by various crises, and Synthite recognized the need for global hubs for sourcing, manufacturing, sales, and customer support. Ironically, it took a lot of persuasion by Synthite's application experts to help create a domestic market for oleoresins. As a testimony to the company's resolve, today, the Indian domestic market is one of its largest. The proliferation of smartphones enabled social media influence as a key factor in retail buying decisions. Synthite sought to become a better business-to-business partner by experiencing the retail market and learning to respond faster to emerging consumer trends. There is a perceptible change in the air. Consumer demand seems to respect mindful consumption and sustainable choices. We are helping our customers make sustainable choices too. Non-solvent extraction technology, alternatives to synthetic ingredients, more efficient and audited supply chains, as well as leveraging the potential offered by biotechnology. We are open to the possibility that our upcoming state-of-the-art factory may be visible only under a microscope. Over the past 50 years, Synthite has evolved into a global movement, and suffice to say that any human being who has ever consumed packaged food has experienced Synthite at least once. Synthite, inspired by nature.
I think what we want to know is how it happened. And that's why I wanted to showcase this in between, because we've seen what has happened with Synthite, how it grew from 1973 to what it is today. And you've seen the multiple products, and all this didn't happen by chance. Everything happened by choice. There were a lot of events which have led to Synthite being what it is today. So I think my next question to you would be, what was your dad's foresight actually when he started something like this? Because those were the days when everyone liked to have their spices as spices, right? No one was using oleoresins or powders or anything here. So what made him actually think of something like this?
Actually, what really triggered him, he saw the liquid spices in its liquid form at the Expo 70, where he had gone as a visitor. And coming back, I mean, he still has those letters. One of his cousins living in the US, he's a professor there. He was a professor there. He sent him a paper cutting saying that US is importing a lot of spices into US at that time and processing it there, value-adding there. So there was already extraction happening in the US because the extracted spices were used in the processed food industry for flavoring, as an ingredient for flavoring. So that is already happening, and then we saw the opportunity, why not? The spices are in our backyard. If we have the technology, we could. And again, like what Steve Jobs said, connecting the dots, it was fortunately around that time that the Central Food Research Institute, CFTRI, announced the technology for extraction of spices. So he and his brother went to Mysore, C.V. Paul and C.V. Jacob went to Mysore with a few bags of pepper and cardamom. And we actually saw the product, steam distillation and extraction happening at the lab level. And based on that, they got an understanding with the CFTRI for transfer technology, and they built the first plant. But unfortunately, like any institutions like this, they do everything in the lab, but scale up is a different ball game altogether. So scale up did not work the way it was expected to. The product was very hard. It was not flowable, and there were a lot of challenges. So it took about 4 years for them to standardize the product. That is where early on itself, though their business was just getting off the ground, struggling with it. Fortunately, we got in touch with a company called J. Mannheimer's. They were looking for a supply because they were a trading company and they had contacts with the industry there. So that was a big fortunate event that happened. Subsequently, Dad and the team then decided to make sure that they invest in technology and invest in science. So we had Dr. James Verghese who joined him. He was a retired professor from Baylor University. So he set up a team to work on the research side. So we had publications very early itself on regarding this. So the world viewed Synthite as a quality supplier because of the science background that we had. And again, the organizations have had a culture for quality because these were ingredients that were going into food, so which meant that it had to meet with all the quality standards. Though we didn't have major certifications, at least the standards were being met. So that gave that momentum during the late 70s and early 80s, the momentum to grow.
So I think he saw the opportunity, he went for it. But something which he also did was get people from outside. And he had a set of professionals helping him out with the things he didn't know. And that is something which many of us as entrepreneurs don't do. Like, we want to do everything ourselves. And we talk about it today as buzzwords, but in those days, he actually had people coming from outside, helping with technology, helping with research. And that is the foundation on which Synthite has been built. What do you have to say on that?
Absolutely. I mean, without that base and without having those contributions. So when we talk about Synthite, it's not a like I remember whenever that someone tells him he's a self-made man, he always used to refute, saying that I always had a team. I always had support from a lot of people that worked around him. So that made sure that he had a system in place. He had his own way of looking at it, maybe not as professional or the way we look at it today, but of course he had people dedicated to work. But at the same time, the follow-up, the need for details was also very meticulous in the way he approached things, and he worked tirelessly. That time, because I used to live with him soon after I finished engineering and joined my dad, I used to live with him. So I learned from him. That is also the reason why some of the things that I do today shaped me the way I am today, because of the fact that I lived with him and stayed with him all these years and know the way. Sometimes I always tell, currently when I always say, because today on Monday morning when we're discussing an issue, the first thing that the team would tell me is, yes, we'll try to solve this by next Monday. But for Dad, it was like tomorrow. So I always say that the times have changed because when you make it too professional, what happens is you have to make sure that everybody's, that agility that, I'm sure you would have noticed in the video that, it says that he made Synthite in his own image. That is the agility and the speed at which he did things. That is significant. That's one DNA that we don't want to lose, despite being professional or despite going towards being more professional. One aspect that we want to lose is the fact that we should be able to hit the nail in the head at the right time, and without too much of.
So as a person, he got in professionals, but also very important is the involvement of family into the business. So he had his sisters, children, and all of you came in. So a lot of the next generation and his generation actually came into the business. And today this is something which many family businesses struggle. So how did that, do you have any idea how that was managed? And
I joined the business, of course, we had room, because what generally happens in a family business is at some point the family grows faster than the business. So then there's not space for everyone. So at least during our time, the business was going faster than the family. So for that reason, we all had our space and had our own areas where we could focus. So that was very important, and that actually kept us all focused on work. We didn't have to worry so much about who was doing what, because everybody had enough to do. But in 2012, we took a conscious decision that yes, now the family is growing faster than the business, and we need to address issues because the next generation was getting ready to come into the business. A couple of them were already drafted in, not very formally drafted into the business, so it was all becoming a little haphazard. Fortunately, after several interventions, because I had the good fortune of attending various programs at ISB, specifically focused on family business. And 2006 is when I entered in the BEST program, which was conducted by ISB, where John Ward, professor from Kellogg, was the main person. And there was a lot of learning from that 3-day event that I came back with. I was very enthused. I shared with the board members about, we having to do a structure or work towards a structure. But it somehow didn't happen. But in 2012, finally, when Dad was still very active in the business, George Paul was very active, all agreed that we get a family business coach on board. And he worked with us for a year and a half. The final mandate for him was to create a constitution, a structure for the family business, which happened after 18 months. And again, one thing particular that we did also was the fact that we created a constitution that's a requirement for our family. We didn't copy from something that was available, or there are many other families who have done it in the past, but we didn't do that. So Joseph spent quality time with us, with the next generation, with the senior professionals, and eventually we all together drafted. So we all are party to the document today. And that also was a great, looking back, when Dad is no more with us and George Paul is also not with us anymore, the Blue Book, or what we call the Constitution, is holding us together because we wrote the Constitution together and we are all party to it. We are all agreed to it several years back in 2012. So that is what's holding us together and making sure that it stuck. And we are more or less following it, but like any constitution, it needs amendments. It's a living document, it needs amendments, which we have not done very structurally, but I think we have now plans of working on it because the family needs are changing, things are changing, business is changing.
So what we're talking about is interventions that have to happen so that the business maintain course and then get way. But there are definitely a lot of milestone moments in the business which probably you started off as an oleoresin company. And I know with the name Synthite, many people used to call it Synthetic Chemicals Limited. I've heard it myself. And initially I used to also wonder what this is. Even when you were talking about natural products, I remember on stage someone saying Synthetic Chemicals Private Limited and natural products. So I'm sure all these were a dichotomy, right? But there were a lot of interventions and milestones that have happened over the years for your diversification. And could you just run us through, because I know all of them were by choice, and as you modestly said, yes, we've had failures. I guess that's part of it. But if you look into what you've done and how you've actually moved, I'm sure all of us today sitting in this room must have had something of yours to eat from it today. Because it could be in some food which we had today, something of theirs would have been added. So could you just take us through that intervention from being this export company doing oleoresins to becoming a company which does chocolate, which does kitchen treasures, which does vegan food? So could you just take us through that journey?
If I were to start from the early 90s, again, one more thing that I want to say, that I always say that we grew more by accident than design, which is with all humility I would say that, because a lot of these events happened, which of course we capitalized on these events, but then these were events that helped Synthite to grow. The first of which, from the time I've been part of the business, is the huge shortage of paprika, which was a main product used in coloring food, which was primarily produced in Spain. And Spain, because of the high costs of the raw material and the process, the world had time, we came up with a product which is equivalent to that, using our Kashmiri chilies, as you would all popularly know, which is a chili grown in the north of Karnataka. We developed a technology to extract the color from it, and then it would still have some heat, so we split the color and the heat and make it into two different products. So that color became a replacement for paprika. So that really put us on a different map altogether in terms of the growth, because that particular product, which is the largest consumed oleoresin in the world, gave not only Synthite, maybe first 2 years Synthite an advantage, subsequently other players also became actively involved, and gave India a strong presence in the world map in terms of supply of paprika. And Bedigi was highlighted in the world market for that reason. That was one event. Then as in 92, 93 or 94 we got the ISO certification, so we were able to demonstrate how we maintain quality and the standards within the organization. We were the first food company, I think, in India to get certified ISO certification. So that gave a lot of confidence for the multinational companies like the Givaudan's, IFFs of the world to look at sourcing from India directly. Rather than having to manufacture themselves or manufacture from other countries, they were willing to source from India. That was a major event which actually propelled growth during the 95 to 2000 period.
If I could just intervene here, I think a key aspect there was also quality was unheard of from India at that point in time.
Yes.
So if you could just touch upon how that emphasis of R&D, quality and innovation also played a major role in this.
As in food, as you would know, I mean, like that has the biggest, I mean, I would say biggest barrier today. Making olive resin is not a barrier, but making an olive resin or a spice extract or any form of food ingredient, complying with all the regulations is the biggest challenge today. So there we had to ensure that the right quality raw material is being bought, or today if that's not available, how do you backward integrate to make sure that you have the right raw material coming in. So we have integrated pest management programs running in certain areas of the chili growing areas so that we get the right input raw material. That's one. The second thing is about whatever we can do in advancements today. As gradually, I'm talking about today now. I'm not the 90s, but today people are looking at even going solvent free. What are the other technologies that can be applied to isolate active ingredients from a raw material without having to use any solvents? So if you look at today, Synthite has got all of the technologies, not just that we have them, but we have them working and making products using all the various technologies that are used for isolation other than using solvents. So that way we put an investment behind it, we put people behind it and research behind it. And one of the technologies that we have for a non-solvent is a patented technology of Synthite, and which is now actually, we invested around 2005-06, but now that's become a big market for it. So it's taken that much time for it to gain market share, but still having thought about it and invested in it. So I was, when we were having casual chat, if you look at what happened to Kodak, they knew they had the technology, but they never wanted to try the technology of digital photography, and they lost out completely. So at least if you look at it in those parallels, we have invested in technologies in advance and also are experimenting them and not shelving them, saying that that's not going to happen. So that is also the reason why if you saw the video towards the end, we're talking about the fermentation technology that's going to be applied, where we may not need for example, to make it easier to make an example, vanilla or vanillin can be made synthetically. Vanillin can be extracted from the natural vanilla beans. But you can also make vanillin from ferulic acid, which can be extracted from rice bran. And you convert that rice bran, that ferulic acid, to vanillin using microorganisms in a biofermenter. So technology in biofermentation or biomanufacturing is advancing so much. Of course, in pharma it's advanced quite a lot, but in flavors and fragrance molecules also that technology is being used very widely, or it will slowly get used very widely. Where maybe 10-15 years down the line, you don't need all these spices to make all these flavors. You would be able to use a carbon source, a microorganism, and make all these ingredients. So it will be a complete disruption to what we're doing today. It probably will happen, and that will be the most sustainable way of doing it, because you don't have to grow thousands of acres of paprika or chilies or other, but you could do all this in a biofermenter. You could make all these flavors. So things are changing in that direction, and at least we are keeping pace with it. We are keeping abreast of it, so that we are not completely obsolete at some point of time.
So from a B2B company, Synthite has now transitioned into many of your things that B2C, and your customer facing. Earlier, no one knew about you. You were supplying to businesses. They were using your product, and the customers were having it. So today you are in transition with Sprig and Kitchen Treasures, Paul and Mike, and Naxtra, and all that, where you're actually customer facing. That wouldn't have been an easy decision, because B2B is a different space to be in. And also you could talk about the next generation coming in, because I think the next generation has also played a large part in transitioning from a B2B to a B2C company. So just talk about those also here.
So before that, I would talk again about another B2C segment of Synthite, which is Simega, which again, Synthite, we make spice extracts, which go into making flavors. So it's still an ingredient. And then the flavor company would make a flavor, which goes into a food. So we are 2 stages before the actual product and the consumer. So Simega, when we looked at 2005-06, when we were looking at vertically growing, the processed food in India was growing, just about starting. We felt the need of seeing whether we can have a forward integration or vertical integration into further value addition, and we didn't have much knowledge. So we had a joint venture with a company called Omega Flavors in Europe. That is where the name Simega came from. And the flavor seasoning business started with that. Again, it struggled for the first 4-5 years. And in that itself, another segment was the sweet flavors, which was another joint venture with a UK-based company, which Paulo, George Walt's son, my nephew, headed that from the beginning. So when Simega started, we had a foreigner who came as part of Chris, who was the owner of Omega. He also moved into India for some time working with us, and then later he left. And then we had a professional, Santosh, to take over the business. So we had professionals and family members in the business at various levels. Then in 2014, we thought, we are doing a lot of products and food ingredients, but not actually any consumer product, and we are not relevant to the local market. So that's how Kitchen Treasures, the idea of Kitchen Treasures came up. The thought process of Kitchen Treasures was that we could be not just making spice masalas, but everything that's required for a kitchen in the future, and a very generic name so that we could go national and international with that name. But unfortunately, the spice masala business in India is so, each state has got its own brand and there's no national brand, and it's very unlikely that something like that would happen. So we were confined to Kerala. Again, when that initiative came up, one of my nephews who was in the business, was just joining the business, took up the responsibility, and he drives the business separately. And we were very clear that anything facing consumer has to be completely different from the business to business, because we could not couple the two, because the marketing is different, the product requirements are different, the customer requirements are different, market development or product development is very different. So it is a completely different entity within Synthite that focused on the consumer side. And subsequently, when Sprig also was a product line which we were doing a lot of novel ingredients, but we were not able to get much market for it because we were not able to show that product in applications. So the guy who developed it, Vishal, suggested that why don't we create a brand, have these products in applications so that we can show our consumer, our ingredient buyers, products in application. That's how we started Sprig as a experimental brand, but today it's doing reasonably well. Cocoa, again, we were exploring the opportunity. Cocoa extraction, basically, Vikas was my executive assistant at the time, was studying the market, and he got fancied by the opportunity for the value-added chocolates within India. And we pursued that, and today Paul and Mike is a decent brand, of course, like Jacoby. Paul and Mike is also a decent brand within India for the high culture chocolate, the high value of premium chocolate. And it is a bean to bar where we have the entire value addition happening within Synthite. So these were initiatives that we took forward as a consumer, but still we fancy, or what our main core interest is still in the business to business. Let me be honest about it. These businesses are running well, they're doing okay, they probably are market facing also, but in terms of our heart and soul is still with the business to business.
So just go through, so where do you see yourself moving forward, right? Moving forward, and this probably is my last question to you on business. So where do you see yourself going forward, and also how do you see succession happening hereafter? Because now there are more nephews in the business, and so how do you see this moving forward? A lot of customer-facing businesses, a lot of B2B businesses, you have construction, so a lot of things happen. So how do you see this? Because at the end of the day, it has to be a pyramid on top, right? Someone has to be there on top. So how do you see this transforming itself?
As I mentioned, our focus would be still consumer, business to business as an ingredient supplier. But then we have also, in the meantime, created opportunities not just in the spice space, and again, not just spices for flavors and food, but also health and wellness for pet food, which is a significant segment today, and where a lot of natural ingredients. If you won't believe it, the specification requirements for ingredients for pet food is much more stricter than human food. So to that extent, that's a reality. So there's a lot of focus on the ingredients for the pet food industry and also there's a lot of replacement happening of synthetic molecules used in food today, whether it's antimicrobial products or antioxidant products. And in that not only applies to food, but also in personal care products. So on all of this, there's a lot of natural ingredients coming up. So a lot of research, development, I told you about fermentation, those are areas that we would focus on from a manufacturing side on the core business. But relating to that, since we are already in the food ingredient space, expanding the product portfolio horizontally is another opportunity. So recently we took our business in Turkey, which is into organic, herbs and herbs. So herbs is a natural extension to spice. So similarly, there are other areas of businesses like a lot of hydrocolloids and similar areas of businesses, which is very related to food ingredients. So expanding the portfolio is one aspect, and also improving our presence within the US market and also the European market, physical presence and maybe buying a business there and growing the business there. These are the area discussions, basic strategic discussions that the organization is having today. While in terms of the family in the business, I would say we give importance for family as well as professionals within the business. There are businesses today, verticals which are run by members of the family. There are professionals who run the businesses. So within the core Synthite Industries itself, earlier my brother-in-law was a CFO. Now we have a professional CFO running the finance part. Our CHRO is a professional. Simega is run by a professional, whereas Herbalize is run by a nephew of mine. So we have a good mix of family, and Ashok runs the retail business. So we have a good mix of family and professionals. The Blue Book or our constitution needs to be amended or improved based on what the family requires now. The process of we going in more and the evaluation or the further growth opportunities could come through a strategic partnership or combining a lot of businesses together, becoming a larger conglomerate is another opportunity of going IPO and growing further. So there are multiple opportunities in front of us. We are evaluating all of those, but we definitely want to make sure that the business continues the momentum that it had over the years.
Transitioning from a family business
to a business family.
That's with business, I think. But boardrooms can be stressful, right? So I'm sure you have a lot of passions and interventions you do to keep yourself who you are. So what are those things which you're passionate about other than spices and whatever you do in the business?
I used to always play badminton, and the evenings, of course, we have played together, and that was one recreation that I had. Of course, I was a member of the club. I used to be active in the Lions Club and other few activities. But I think 2014-15, I read Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. Club. That had a huge influence on me, and literally practiced it. I practiced exactly the same way for about 4 or 5 years, and I have modified it a bit, but still, I became an early riser. I'm up at 5. First 4 or 5 years, it was exactly 20 minutes was exercise. I used to straight away swim for 20 minutes. Then I used to have my meditation, and then I used to do reading. I continue to do that, but in a slightly different format now. And then, of course, through a friend of mine, I got into horse riding, so I do a bit of horse riding. I stopped playing because of my injury to my knee, but I still do exercise. Today, I get up at 5, I do a bit of reading, meditation. My wife gets up by then, we stay up, rest, and then we have a trainer who comes at 6:30 to 7:30, we train, and then 8:30, 8:45 I'm at the office. Evenings when I get time, I ride, but not that often as much as I want to, but I do that. I don't play shuttle anymore. And of course, Jacob and I are part of the 6 friends that we have in college. We travel together occasionally, and that's also where you chill out, you completely forget. My dad also used to play, and he used to always play with younger people, so that he remained young at heart. I am also trying to practice the same. All my friends are much younger than me. I'm 60 and all my friends are 50 and below, so at least the 6 of us. So making sure that I'm in good company so that I remain young at heart.
Whilst he said that, he's the youngest amongst us, so you can see how he is.
When we started the when we initiated the pollen mite chocolate thing, Vikas, who was working with me and initiated that business, he had the opportunity to go and visit one of the West Indian islands where he saw the high intensity farming. So we had to do something different because so he insisted that the cocoa is becoming or will become short because Indian per capita consumption is only this much, and if you look at the statistics of the future, there's not enough cocoa being grown, and India was a net importer of cocoa. So first his idea was buy hundreds of acres and plant cocoa. Then I said no, let's not get into that because India we don't know of it. So why not me do 2 or 3 acres of cocoa cultivation and see whether it's actually going to work for another farmer, because rather than getting a lot more people into it, rather let's do it ourselves and see whether we can prove to others that high density farming would work. That's how the cocoa farming initiative started. And Vishal, who was our new product development and research head, he had a passion for horses. He had one horse which he used to stable at somewhere past Thrissur, and he used to go on the weekends to ride. Then I told him I'll build a small shed to house one of his horses, but eventually today we have 10 horses, a proper stable. And I also took it to riding, and then eventually made sure that all our dad had given some estates to me. So I made sure that there's you can ride around inside the estate itself. So that's how we started enjoying farming plus horse riding, and so it became a combination of these things, and it became a good weekend, so I don't necessarily come to Cochin that often, or I don't have too many friends in Cochin. I'm confined to Collins City. I'm very happy there because everything is around me there. So my work is close, my life around, whatever I need to do for my enjoyment is also there. So I've been a Collins boy all.
So it's like those Western movies, right? You finish work, come back, get on a horse, go around your estate, come back. No, it's actually with a hat and with those. I've seen him, so with all that, and he's fallen also. So it's not that it's all. But I remember those days. You talk to him. The only thing he would talk to you was about horses. And he was so passionate about. I think he used to get up in the morning, go evening. You used to be there.
I used to ride in the morning.
But why I'm taking you through all this is just to showcase Aju as an overall person, right? As a person who, of course, the business is there, and we walk through the business. We've not specifically said what made, but there are a lot of key points to take away from how the business has transformed itself to what it is today. And also, as the person today, largely managing the business, he still finds time to do what he's passionate about. He still finds time to travel with us. And when we travel, it's 10 days off. And believe me, he's the only guy who doesn't get calls. All of us get calls. So he doesn't get calls. No one wants him here. I think we're very happy when he's not here. But that being said, I think there's a lot of social things you do. So I know you don't like to speak about it, but there's the CVJ Foundation and a lot of other things which you are involved in. Could you just touch upon a bit of that also in terms of what all you're doing in terms of your social work and
of the things that I do outside the business? Of course, we are involved with the social club called the Brookside. That again, years back when there was an opportunity to build a club like that. It was ahead of time in College, but then a lot of people supported and we were able to make it happen. The other thing is from '95, I'm with Jacob's father. I became the director of Medical Mission Hospital when it was almost sinking, and his father, myself, then my dad also helped. We all worked together in turning around at the hospital, and I played my role. Of course, Joy Chetan as the leader has played the majority role, but then in finance or certain areas that I worked, I was able to contribute in helping, making sure that was a big giving back opportunity for me, because for all what has happened in the years, I would say that I feel completely satisfied, because from the background that I came in the studies and as an average student where I am today, I feel that there's a lot more that I need to give back to the society. Not by money is one aspect, the other is how I can contribute to making things better. And the work at the hospital was something that really helped. Now I'm involved in school. There again, I'm only trying to manage certain things. I'm not trying to be in control of things, but making sure that how can we take the school to the next level, and how can we support such initiative to get good people to work together as a team to take it to the next level. So these are things where I find a lot of my weekends go in that. unfortunately. So that's where probably only thing that I get is a couple of weeks off that I get when I travel with the family, or a couple of weeks that we travel once or twice a year is when I get full break. But otherwise, Monday to Friday is work, and then Saturday, Sunday is all the social activities. But it's rewarding, and it makes you feel happy.
So we spoke about fitness, we spoke about his routine. Another thing probably I would like to touch upon is the mindset. And you did go to the Sadhguru Academy, I remember, and you did speak about meditation at that point in time. And also the mindset that keeps you the youngest of all of us, right? So could you just elaborate on something which, what is it that drives you to be you?
I think I like to differentiate between spirituality and religion. I talk more about, see, thing is, you have to showcase what you do as a Christian and as a practicing Christian. I would like to show that in what I do, rather than saying that rather than preaching a lot about it, in how I can be with people. I used to be a much more different person in the sense that I used to be much more tough with people and much more stricter. Over the years, with all these interventions, whether it's Sadhguru or some of the other readings that I have helped me. I wanted to see the change in myself rather before I asked somebody else to change. I myself wanted to change, and I personally feel that I've changed significantly. But again, not 100%. Like I have a personal coach the other day when I was talking to him. Yes, you must have been this big a cobra, now you've become a smaller cobra, but you're still a cobra. So I really have to completely transform. I won't say that I've completely transformed that, but I'm still at it, trying to make sure that I've become much more evolved in that respect, because it is only in certain contexts that I can explain it, but in terms of better refinement, being a better person, better human being, I still need to work on it. I'm trying my best, and I've got a personal coach. I read. These are the efforts that, and also meditation. A lot of these things help me, but it's again a journey. So I want to go through the journey to be a better person.
My last question to you, and probably I wouldn't ask you to advise other leaders, but probably your thoughts on what people need to imbibe in their lives, and also the importance of having a personal coach or a business coach, and what role they play in actually transforming you as an individual and getting your true potential up.
Do what you feel really passionate about. Don't force yourself to do anything. That is going to be a challenge. If you're passionate about it, you will find a lot of ways to crack the problems and challenges, and then a lot of the problems become opportunities then. Otherwise, if you're doing it for the sake of doing it, then everything can become a problem, and that can doom you. So do something that's passionate for yourself, that makes a whole difference. Again, I discovered the passion, I joined the business and I discovered it, but at least then I've stayed on with it. So and I don't see any problem as a problem. Whenever people talk about problem, I said, yes, problems are there, but then how do we find solutions to problem? That's most important. So that's one aspect. The other is, it's always, what I have realized having a personal coach is, he challenges you. About a few weeks back, a couple of months back, in fact, he asked me, what is my purpose? I still not been able to answer that question. He asked me the question, what is your purpose? And I keep giving definitions, but he says, no, that's not the case. I try to explain what I'm trying to do. So then it's business related, but what is your basic purpose? I bought a book, HBR book about purpose and I think it's called Purpose, Passion and Focus. I tried reading it. There's a lot of questions there. I try to answer it. In fact, I've written some answers. I'll hopefully be meeting him next week and trying to explain that. Hopefully, it meets the requirements. But so that way, they challenge you to look back and see every action of yours or every thought process of yours is challenged by a coach. So that makes you refine yourself and make sure that you get better answers for the problems that you're facing.
Thanks, Aju. I'm sure many of you have questions for Aju. So I'd like to throw the floor open to you for questions. And if you want a mic, you can take my mic because I could do it.
So thanks so much, Jacob and Aju, for that wonderful session. It's very inspiring. And my name is Pradeep Nair, and I have been a branding and marketing person for the last 2 decades. The question that I had was, Synthite is a fairly large brand, yet not very popular from a perspective how bigger brands at your level are. And I come from I'll rather draw a parallel with a company like the Murugappa Group, which I was a part of at some point in time. Now, they had about 29 odd companies within Murugappa Group, and nobody knew Murugappa Group, even in Tamil Nadu. So I see a lot of similarity for Synthite that way. Yes, I understand you're a B2B business, but doesn't it feel, what are your observations or what are your feelings with regard to the aspect of Synthite not probably being as popular a brand, as it should be, considering that it's such a large brand?
And we continue to be low profile in many ways. Of course, now today we have Kitchen Treasures as a brand, but even when Kitchen Treasures, the brand came up and Ashok started running it, at some point he didn't want so much of Synthite in the brand because people would call it synthetic and then it could be wrongly, it could be not the right thing for the brand to carry. Kitchen Treasures is the brand to carry Synthite's name on the back of the pack or even in an advertisement. Later they realized that, of course, people do recognize Synthite and that's a value in being called from the house of Synthite. Did make sense. So that's primarily the only reason why we do not pursue it. And today, yes, if you're going to public market or if you're going an IPO, then that brand value makes a difference. And probably we'll have to start building that brand now. I mean, that's something that we are working on in the sense that we're not working on intensely, but we'll have to do that at some point if you are to be known as a business. Again, not only for the business, but in terms of getting good professionals and people like that, branding would be very, very required. You're absolutely right, but we have not pursued it so far. We have remained low profile.
Sorry, I'll just do a follow-up question as well. From a branding perspective, especially in the B2B space, I just wanted to know how different is it for you compared to the usual B2C brands. Like for Kitchen Treasures, I understand how branding for that works, right? And I'm a B2B marketer, but I work mostly in the space of technology. So I wanted to understand for a brand like Synthite, how do you go about the B2B marketing aspect? Because you said you have a lot of collaboration with brands in Europe and you obviously sell across the world, right? So how do you do that?
I mean, one way we get out of the customers is being at the international exhibitions, the food, very specific food ingredient exhibitions we participate in. That's where we get a lot of our visibility to our customers, and customers get to see us. And today, in the ingredient business, if you look at the flavor, seasoning, or related perfumery ingredients business, Synthite is a known brand as an ingredient supplier. That internationally is there, but we're not making any concerted effort towards branding it as Synthite. But we are very well known as a consistent supplier, a quality supplier in our space. So for that reason, we have not looked beyond that, to be honest. I mean, I don't have a specific answer for that. That every member of the family would not get a chance to be in the business. And that was a decision because in our family, we are 6 of us. So 6 of us have 2 children, that's 12. And then George Paul's family, then there are 4 or 5 children. George Paul has 2 children and then his brother has got 3. So we were very sure that we'll only have a maximum 1 person from each family in the business. So naturally when my daughter finished her studies and she was with her husband in Europe, I always encouraged her to look at this space but not directly involved with Synthite. So she got a chance to work with Givaudan for a couple of years when she was in Europe. So she learned about the skincare and she herself had a problem with skin. So she made an extra effort to learn more about it, worked with the company there, developed the product, and when she came back, she wanted to launch that product in India. And I fully backed her, and I made sure that she got, maybe Synthite is supplying some ingredients to her. Other than that, there's no support from Synthite. But personally, I was willing to support her to grow the business, and I'm extremely happy with what she's done. Business-wise, she's a long way to go, but at least as a brand and as a person, how she's developed and shaped up, I'm really happy to see the way she's grown the business, and I'll continue to support her.
I've seen a lot of people who can't distinguish between both. So there are a lot of people who think pesticides are used to increase shelf life. Say you are using a pesticide to remove fungus, then why can't you use the same in turmeric powder? So how do you respond to this, or do you have any plans for generating consumer awareness? And this issue is also creating the upcoming of a lot of in-situ drilling units in and around the city who are not bothered to do any incoming quality control. They don't have any facility to do this, the chromatography and the incoming residue they cannot evaluate. So people think what they do is better, clean and fresh. So how do you respond to this situation?
This particular question I would answer for the industry, not for Synthite, because it's an industry issue, because it's very unfortunate that the media projects it the way it's projecting it. None of us are adding any illegal dyes or pesticides into any of these materials. Because the farmers are using these pesticides, and in fact some of the illegal dyes or the colors that come in are the colors that are used in the pesticide, which being systemic gets into the in the raw material, and when you grind it. So if you go and buy, if you're saying that it is happening in the ground product, then you go buy the raw product and test it. It will also have it, because the agriculture ministry and the chemical food and the fertilizer and chemical ministry, they don't talk to each other. What they are not sure about what molecules to ban in this country. For that reason, all these chemicals are still available, molecules are still available for farmers to use. And then naturally they use it, and these residues will get carried forward in the raw material. And when you extract it, gets concentrated, or when it gets powdered, it remains in the powder. So unless the system cleans itself up, it is not going to get any better. So we do have some specific programs for certain raw materials, like chilies. We have got 7,000-8,000 tons grown under the integrated pest management program, which is completely controlled. We get a clean input. But then to scale that to 1,000, the million tons, India produces about 2 million tons of chilies. That a single organization or an industry cannot do it. It has to come from the government directives and changes on what exactly are the molecules to be used in case of a pest attack, so that even banned molecules, worldwide banned molecules are used in the industry. That becomes a huge challenge.
Have you felt any backlash for Indian products because of this?
Not really. Today, at least for extracts, we have technology to clean it up. So we are able to clean up once you make an extract, we can clean all these residues and give a cleaner product. Because we can't buy all raw material clean, so we had to evolve, and as I mentioned earlier, technology and support, we have been able to clean the product. So as a liquid, but as a powder, you can't do that. That's why the residues remain the powder and what you hear in the market because of that negative news.
Hi Aju, I'm Anisha. This is a question more out of curiosity. How did the brand name Synthite come along? Because it's extraction of natural products and oleoresins and everything to do with natural stuff. So synthetic or Synthite, how does that name come?
That the chemical business prior to starting Synthite, polyformalin, that's a factory in Tripura. So they were the first idea was to expand the facility and had something close to home in Kaderu, and they had already registered a company under the name Synthite Industrial Chemicals Limited. We were not even Synthite Industries, but we were Synthite Industrial Chemicals Limited. So this was supposed to be an extension of that factory, that business, under another name, because I think beyond a certain turnover, those days you came out of this small scale industry, so people generally start another company doing the same product, so they had registered another company under the name Synthite Industries Chemicals Limited, and that's when the opportunity for spice extraction came up. And those days, registering a new company and starting those things were difficult. So they had almost got everything done, license, everything was done, so they just had to add spice extract to the list of products being made, and they started under the name. Fortunately, the business clicked and it grew. That it became a challenge, and which again in 2007-8, when we were looking at, we even thought about changing the name. But then by then all our customers knew it was a known name in the market, so that's why we took out the industrial chemicals and made it Synthite Industries Limited, and Synthite itself as the logo with the N underscore. The N is written as infinite and underscore is green. So it's infinite opportunities on green. Naturals is the connotation with the N underscore. Earlier it was a conical flask was the logo. It was purely chemical business. It was supposed to be, but then it was by fate, good, bad, we are here today.
What is your approach to crisis in the organization? You've seen it all over a 50-year span, labor issues, allegations, and all sorts of problems. What is your personal approach to handling such?
It was a time when Dad was stepping out of the etc. of the business. George Paul was ill and not really active. Somewhere in our earlier boardroom discussions, when this was brewing, when they were also there, was that we would not allow any collective bargaining, or we will not allow a union. So, and when they had, in that process of 6 months, when they both were out of the business, it became a matter of pride for both me and my brother that, how do we let a union come in? We didn't have it all these years, and they've got, both the senior leaders are gone, and so it was a bit of an ego thing, and which actually, on the hindsight, was a negative approach that we took. So we are also to equally be blamed. Of course, there were unreasonable aspects from the trade union as well, but there were certain things that lack of our maturity or understanding in how to deal with the collective bargaining was also the reason. But I would not say that we didn't have the understanding, because in Coimbatore we had union. Calicut, when we took over the business, we had 4 unions there. We still managed all these years. In 2016, in fact, we sold the business. We sold the land, liquidated it. We had managed all this, but somehow none of this wisdom prevailed when this happened in Kadiri, to be very honest. So we should have actually, since we had gone through all this, we should have actually approached it with a lot more wisdom, managed that collective bargaining or that discussions much more effectively, and not create a situation that happened. So it was from both sides, and we are equally to be blamed in some ways for some of the things that happened at Synthite at that time, and I'm sure we won't make that mistake again.
P and N. P for positive and N for negative. But in your case, N became positive. Okay, because that one letter N is projected everywhere in your, on the top of the building also, you have put only one letter N. In Synthite, that N means it is the name of your house name or something like that?
No, N is, as I mentioned, N is actually written like infinite. N is written like infinite. And the underscore is green. So it is infinite opportunities on the green. That is naturals. That's what the designer, the logo, the person who designed the logo was trying to explain. And I try to explain it whenever I can.
Yeah, N became positive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
One last question. One more.
That corporate film was phenomenal. So, what telling you, that was great. I haven't seen something like that in a very, very long time. Now,
Thank you.
Associated with that, I have a question coming from involved in a multi-generational family business in manufacturing. Do you have a successful strategy when it comes to sort of managing growth and plateaus and declines and diversification and things of that nature? Have you sort of instituted a standard process in your organization that you seem to be doing very well?
I didn't get the last part.
What I was asking is, so again, the reason that I mentioned the corporate film is that you had tied the story with a growing India, that there were these opportunities, and you sort of rode the wave as well, taking advantage of those opportunities. So I would imagine that the pace of growth in the organization would have been great in the beginning, would sort of become more and more, a little bit more difficult with every passing, let's say, 10 years, right? So when a business sort of, the growth of the general environment sort of stalls or slows down, you would diversify or invest in new businesses, etc. My question is, do you have a standard process that you have employed in the organization that sort of, institutes this as a repeatable system?
One good thing with the food ingredient business is, even in recession, people need to eat. So ingredient business actually does not slow down with recession, which we saw in 2008. We saw it much later. Even during the COVID time, we didn't see that. So for that reason, I would say to an extent we are insulated from when there is a financial crisis. So, but at the same time, the growth trajectory is also not in line. If you look at the IT companies, or if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, and how those names have changed, if you look at the food industry, or people who are in the food industry, they would probably be all stationary. If you look at the retailers and food industry, they will always be in certain levels, which they have not come down, not gone up too much either. So that's also the reason why we in 2012-13, when we also discussed, we said we'll stay focused on the food ingredient business and not diversify into anything that's non-core. So since then, our focus has been to do forward integration, backward integration, or horizontally look at opportunities to add more products to our current portfolio by geographic expansion, like what we did in Sri Lanka or Vietnam or Turkey more recently, and in Brazil what we did. All those were in line with the current business, but expansion of new product or adding new products from new origins. That's what we looked at, because the customers are very, very similar, processes being similar, so we are able to expand on our basic capability both in terms of manufacturing as well as the customers.
Thank you. There was one question, and that will be the last. Two more.
Hi, Aju. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My question to you is, you've talked about forward and backward integration. I know for a fact in Synthite, your manufacturing is a supplier to one of your other SKUs. I just want to know how complicated it works for penetration in the marketing part. Do you penetrate clients on the same basis as you do your forward and backward integration within your organization, or do you have a separate marketing team that works to make sure that each of your SKUs know exactly how they're working?
In fact, there's more challenge selling inside than selling outside. Today, so at some point we realized that selling to a CMEG, I mean, I'm being very open here, is more challenging, and so we don't force it. Earlier years, of course, there was an understanding that they should buy the equipment, because we have a very, very independent management there. So today they source from anywhere. Even spice extract they would buy from one of our competitors elsewhere in the country, or from Kerala itself they would buy, depending on what suits them in terms of quality and price. But there's a lot of learning that comes. So if we develop a new product for that matter, then we start the initial application studies and product development happens, which can have two impacts. One is establish a product for Synthite, for them to make a market differentiation with the new ingredient that we have made for them. So that makes a market differentiation for them. Recently we had a major success that way. We did something very in a reaction flavor that we did, which became a big differentiator for Simega, and Simega got a huge business based on that. So that do happen, but then a couple of years down the line, probably they'll go to another company and buy the same reaction flavor. That can happen, and that level of autonomous management also is required. Otherwise, they feel compelled, or we are restricting them if you don't allow that to happen.
Good evening, sir. My name is Hari. I'm head of business for Active Base, and I'm very glad that I was here today. Very glad that I was here today to listen to your stories. Something that I've noticed is that you've mentioned 4 times that you have stopped playing badminton. And may I ask, is it a conscious decision, or is it something that you want to pursue further?
It got corrected. I did a PRP treatment and I'm fine with it, but then I don't want to risk that. And again, I started enjoying more my physical training than, but I do miss the social activity, because when we got together in the evening for the badminton, it was a different, because we had 8-9 other friends who came around, and we had not only played but also used to chat, and that's one way to stay connected to the society. That I'm missing, but I started enjoying it, so I can't do everything, so I decided to give up badminton at that point. Yes.
Understood. We are a newly opening facility. We are newly opened. We are yet to launch, but we have already started operations in October, and we are India's most advanced rehabilitation, sports and orthopedic rehabilitation facility, Asia's most second advanced. So if you ever feel like playing badminton again, we can make it happen.
Thank you so much.
There are many others here.
Thank you.
So Aju is the youngest amongst us, okay? So in terms of, we don't call him with his age, because he doesn't know how to do things at a middle level, right? If he does something, it has to be, if he runs, it will be 10 kilometers. If he's badminton he's playing, then it will be like at the other end. If he's working out, it will be, I don't know. So he inspires us to do things like this, because when you see him doing it, when you're much younger, you can't give any excuses, right? You just have to. And the days he sees you and he sees that you put on a little weight, so then automatically you are already in that frame of mind. He's already told me that 2 days back. What is this? So I think why I touched upon this again is it takes a lot to do a lot of things, right? Most of us see the person only outside. We see the business he's doing, but we don't see the underlying person that he is, or what drives him to be who he is. And many times I've seen that it is what you do outside during your personal time and the discipline that you have during your personal time that enables you to be actively involved or be better in what you're doing outside. With that, Aju, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. What I've tried to do is just take you through the business, hoping that you will get insights from all the transitions and things that he's been doing. Because rather than say what made you do this and what made you do that, I thought all the changes and the journey probably will give you insights. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, but he's one of the most humble people I've ever met. Because he doesn't take credit for anything. Anytime you ask him anything, even if it's a game that he's played by himself, he'll probably tell the doctor, help me do it or something. So he's someone like that, and I always try to emulate and kind of learn from him. He's like an older brother to me. So thank you so much, Aju, for agreeing to come here and share with us your knowledge and wisdom and your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I request Mr. V. Krishna to.
Two close friends, Kolanjeri boys who've grown together, lived together, and they've just shared their life with us and opened up so many, I'm sure it's going to be a more candid session. There'll be a lot more stories which they would have to share. You can see that this is being recorded, it's going on YouTube, so they've also, I'm sure, tempered down some of the masala from a lot of their personal, the stories they've shared over the years. So thank you both so much, and Aju, so always it's a matter of great pride for us. Synthite is a group which we have already cherish wherever we speak. Outside of the state also, when we talk about some of the success stories of the state, I'm sure all of us look up to Synthite and the wonderful story we've had. So many sessions we've had over the past. My father has also spoken to us about how from the construction business, how he pivoted to this, and now it's so good to listen to you, and I'm sure a few years later when we sit here, the next gen will be sharing the story of how Synthite has touched 25,000 crores or 50,000 crores. I'm sure that's where it's headed, and so we'll all be celebrating that. So thank you very much, and Jacob, President, you've done a wonderful job, and Aju, hopefully President someday soon. So we are trying our best to rope him into our leadership. We are hoping that he comes in, and thank you all, audience, for all being here, and very, very interactive session, and we look forward to having you with us more often. And I know this is a TiE session, and I should not be talking about another association, but there is a KMA session a couple of days from now, where Aju's daughter will be speaking about the Gunam story. So it's convenient for all of you. We'll share that details. Thank you. Thank you.